Dynamic field, it's a field which allow you to build new editors for CMS without touching or chat at all. Once you install dynamic field, you can add as many dynamic fields to the project, and it's very similar to editor which we already know, like JS Fiddle, CodePen, or something. So let me open it quickly, and I will show you. Here we have section when we need to add all those dependencies to our editor, like CSS, JS, some custom JavaScript to communicate between leaflet and our dynamic field, and also some styling, which is not needed, but I've added it. Also, we have here the preview. So once you will change something here, it should be already reflected here. So you don't need to save changes and check how your editor looks like. What else? Since last 5 years, I've built many of those editors, and I realized that all my editors have something in common. And to be honest, I realized that I don't need to build every time everything from scratch. And I decided to extract some part of code and build something which was called DynamicField. And here you can check if your field works. For example, I can change this marker, save the state, reload the field, and check if restore state will work, just to so we can make sure if everything works as expected. And then when we save the editor and go to real content item, now we can be sure that this editor will work because we already checked inside content type that everything is working as expected, so the state is preserved. So yes, in short, this is dynamic field. As an example, I've prepared many of ready-to-use integrations just to show you how you can build your own dynamic fields. I think that's all. We can go deeper, but
then I will try to rephrase what you did, because it's so obvious to you that it might be not obvious how to explain it to all users. So today in Onshot Core, we have like 15 things, and these are static ones. As compared to your dynamic field, they are static, meaning when we change them, we have to build the project and restart. Right? And what you did is a field that is built once, compiled once, but when it's available in the admin, then you can configure the editor when you edit a content item, and maybe also and the visualization, also the front end, all from the admin. So this way you don't have to create new types of fields in code. You can just say, I want a dynamic field, and here is how you would edit it, and here is how you will display it. Okay, so I think that's the goal of your field.
Yes, exactly.
Then here in this list, it's a content type. Okay, it's a content. It's a content type in which you've added 10 different fields of the same type, but each of them has a different configuration. So if you take a simple, what's the simplest one you can pick, for instance?
The simplest one is, I think, maybe this one.
So this is the dynamic field type. And this screen here is common to all your fields that you've added. It's a list of resources, so the JavaScript that you want to load on the editor, right? The code that will be the editor, the HTML rendered in the editor. And then what do we have?
And we have a JS file which has inside a web component or web element specification. It's placed inside script examples because it's in the project here. I prepared a few examples and this is one of them. So if we will open it, you can find that it's simply class which extends HTML element. Here it doesn't use it doesn't use shadow DOM. And here is the content of the element and the logic. It was placed here as a JS file because I realized that we can use it simply by selecting a file. We don't need to copy paste inline script.
It could reference a media item.
Could you repeat?
Can it reference a media item?
Media item. Media item. You can build something. You can build something similar. You already have an example, which is simple image gallery.
What I mean is that we already have the media on the left. So you could probably upload a JS file as a media and then reference the file.
Yes, and you could build a media field
also
on top
inside
of
the settings, yes.
Exactly.
In the fields.
And here is an example, simple image gallery, which is opening some simple gallery. You can pick the image. And in general, you could replace the logic and use what we already have inside Media App.
Can you include resources, like defined resources by name? Like for example, if you want jQuery, we'll already have it registered. Can you just specify jQuery? And
no.
You need a different syntax. What you could use as because you see the tilde slash, which I assume if you detect tilde slash, you will say, okay, let's link to this file. Otherwise, you say it's a content, but maybe you should also say like hash and the name of a resource, like hash jQuery : 1.9.
I would go one step further and I'll say just have a drop-down menu that display all the resources, that known resources, and then you can just say add this resource, this resource, this resource. This way you don't have to add anything. I think it might be helpful to do that.
Yes, I have another idea because currently it's a work in progress, but I've built something which is a copy existing configuration. Right now you can reuse already defined editor, dynamic editor from other content types, but what's in progress right now, it's a kind of, let's say, repo of dynamic fields. So I wanted to ended up with a kind of list with fetched possible dynamic fields from, let's say, some URL, very similar to how NuGet or NPM works. So you will have an endpoint which will serve a list of possible dynamic fields, and once you will pick one, it will be loaded automatically. And also maybe this list can be hidden because maybe you don't want to mess up with existing field. You just want to use something which was prepared by dev. So this is another idea, and this way we could hide all those resources and code and just have this preview. But as I said, it's a work in progress. For now, foundation for this dynamic field was created. There are a few quite nice additions here because when you place many fields fields with the same dynamic editor, you could end up with plenty of the same resources fetched. That's why I've implemented something which should prevent such situations. And I will try to show you how it works. Oh, sorry, maybe let's use this one, because I already have a few the same dynamic fields. And if we will check what's inside, it's called hash. I'm not sure where we go. Oh, see, here we have. It's called hash, and based on that hash, scripts are compared, so I can avoid to injecting same script twice. Other than that, sometimes the order of scripts is important. That's why inside the editor you can also find those small arrows. Sorry, I'm jumping a bit, but I wanted to show you. Let's here we have those arrows, so you can change the order. It's almost the same what we already have in .NET, which is depends on. There we can use order by resource name. Here we can specify the order by placing each resource in correct place.
I have a comment. So what I suggest you do here, you mentioned that you want to have like some sort of repository for like common fields that you want to reuse. What another idea you might be able to do is have a two option here, whether it's edit one or import. Like you can import, and then instead of having a repository, you can just share a JSON or something, a template, where the user can just copy that template and put it here and import it. And the import will add the resources, will add everything for them, but they don't have to do it themselves. So if I want to have some fancy field that I want to share with everyone else, I can just do it by sharing, this template, and then they can just copy and paste it, and they're done. The other way is to show the editor, which is what you're seeing here. This would be the editor. If you know what you're doing, then you can just use its editor. Other than that, so that way you don't have to try to connect to a server and find what's available. I think it's just that's overcomplicated things, and I think it's easier if you can maybe tell people that, hey, I have a repository of common fields that you can go and look whichever one you want, and you can copy it.
But Mike, you can already share your custom dynamic fields, because I've implemented this way, so you can export it as a recipe. I have already example recipe, which is called dynamic fields recipe.
When you say
then
JSON,
you don't need,
because the storage of the dynamic field is the JSON you want to share and save, right?
Exactly. So here we have code, resources, position, hash, if it's inline or not, source, type, everything is in place. So you just need to go here to recipes. You can import dynamic fields recipe by creating run, and it should be imported. Other idea is to use plans, so you can use export. Here I already prepared something. I can export dynamic fields examples, which is my content type, and this content type already have all those example dynamic fields. But you can create another field, add quite new one, new field, and you can put your content, editor content to the field, and then you can export it and share with others. As you can see,
if you already have that, I wouldn't go and try to connect to like a server where you can select from. I think it's if this is going to stay in your project, Now, my other question is that, do we want this in Orchard, or is this going to be like a separate project?
it has to be a separate project because it's too open. So what's interesting here is that it's a dynamic thing, but you provide 15 different examples. And why not just have static fields for these 15 different examples? Because they might be very useful for users as static fields that has dynamic fields. So it's easy for someone to extend it, to do things quickly and to try things like JavaScript. You don't have to debug, to restart, whatever. But once it's there, I mean, just create a static field. And I don't know, I don't see the otherwise on production the value of having a dynamic thing like this, which is super scary because then you can inject anything from any script from,
That's true, but the purpose of this feature is for developers to speed up a bit prototyping and create, as you said, first maybe dynamic field, which you can use in your project and then turn it into a static field.
You could even have a button to generate the C# code. Oh, this is now your field. Give it a name, and here is the module that you can, the project and everything.
I think having dynamic field structure in Orchard makes sense to me, but not have like more than that. Like you don't want to have like connecting to a gallery or whatnot, but having a field where you can attach resources to it, attach JavaScript, attach code. I think it's fair. I think it's fair to have it because if you can inject, if you're worried about that, well, people can already inject HTML and script.
Yeah, we have templates, we have things like
exactly.
Yeah, to me, it's the same thing as templates. Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, to me, it's actually a good thing to add that dynamic field support in Orchard with a bare minimum. And then if someone wants to, they have their own reusable fields that they always use, then they can do their own thing and have like their own gallery. But I think it's not a bad idea to actually consider putting this dynamic field thing in Orchard directly.
Do we have, what's the permission we set to edit templates for the feature?
What is it?
Permission. We have a permission to be able to edit templates. And I think we should have the same, probably sensitive permission to create or edit dynamic fields.
Yeah, sure. But it's if someone is able to define content type and able to change parts, I mean, that's, you would think the same level.
Not really for the things where we can inject custom JavaScript, yes, but when you edit the text in, you can't inject custom. Well, now you can with your pattern. Now we have to make it safe. So actually it's wrong. Is it? I have to check now.
Yeah. So the question is, do you agree that we should put the dynamic fields in Orchard with limitation?
Yeah, it could be a good idea to have a thing like this, but it's very niche and it will be a dev thing. Not sure it should be enabled by default or visible like this. It will be complicated. People will be confused. You will not mind, but I think
content fields .dynamic maybe a new project.
Whatever the name is, just like it's dynamicity inside something which is dynamic CMS. It's always an issue. It's hard to understand, right? How it works in the end. Not for you, David or Mike, because you do that all day long, but that could be So I mean it's fine. Yeah, sure.
Okay, I also show you because Dynamic Field also have support for GraphQL and SQL Server. SQL databases. So here you can check how it looks like. like there are two values inside each field. It's raw and value. Value, it's everything what you define in your dynamic field. Raw, it's serialized JSON and it's a string simply. When we jump into queries, you can also query
So you create a custom table.
Yes, and here we have this small tiny button or checkbox, index row value. Once checked, only the value of the editor is stored in database. Once it's not checked, we can store every possible sub-item. So let's find our example. Sorry. Here we have this latitude, longitude values with information about the type. So you can query each field from your dynamic fields. But the thing is that all those values are stored as a text because we need to have a single type in databases.
I remember seeing that in the PR and or whatever code I saw, and it's getting complicated because here you are losing data and all the event handlers we have, all the things you would do by code, now you have to find a dynamic way of doing that.
But if you don't need to index data, you just
don't need
to use it.
You don't need. But people, at some point, someone will say, "Oh, I need this value for my search engine, which is Elasticsearch, and only accepts integers and not text for it." No, something, right? And then you're like, "Oh, sorry, you can't use DynamicField." But I've been using and I have all my data like this, and it's now limited, and you didn't understand the limitations, and that's a risk. That works sometimes until the data doesn't work for a user, and they are like, "Oh crap! Now I have to migrate to a static field and do content migration of all my content items," which is impossible. Like the amount of work to migrate, that's these kind of issues that will bite someone, if not us, to maintain the thing. The false promises because, oh, it's a field, it's supported, it's like everything. Oh no, it's not, because GraphQL won't work the same way for these things. Or we have to duplicate the data. Or yeah, it's hard.
Yes, I agree. Maybe it's not the best
there are some
feature.
limitations. Yes, there are some limitations, but
exactly. I've added it for fun. Just for fun.
It's great, but if the risk is that someone starts using it without understanding the limitations until it's too late, and or something we didn't expect, or we like to not work, and then we realize, oh, it's not working. Now we have to find a way for it to make it work. That's the issue. So, yeah, maybe it should live by itself in a repo for now, just for people to try it and to start loving it, and then to see what the issues are, so we can decide to include it. The idea is great, it's just the risk associated to that and all the feature set. And that's great you made the SQL, but yeah, you have a custom table for that now because you don't know the type of each property, so you can't map to existing SQL tables that we have for indexing these fields. Or you will need even more data in your dynamic field to describe that, even more dynamicity. But that's cool. That's a nice idea.
Thank you.
I suggest after, see if you can figure out this last issue that came up right now. And if you can, I would say try to abstract as much as you can into a new project where we could potentially put it into Orchard. And if you want to pursue something else like a gallery or whatnot, keep that into a second project, because I don't think we would include that.
But there is no code for gallery. It's only inside the recipe as an example. So there is no code for any of those dynamic fields. Everything is only inside content types. So actually, I don't need to exclude anything, only those examples JS, and that's it.
Good. Yeah, looks good. Good job.
When did we talk about being able to use JavaScript to map the content item to a search index? We mentioned that recently. Again, I would say 10 years ago, but also recently. Maybe because of Mike, when you refactored something for search engines.
I don't remember.
That would be a good possibility here, such that on top of your field, you need another setting that says run this JavaScript to create the thing to index in SQL or in an index search, such that you can, based on the content item or the field JSON, the stored JSON content, you can then project it to a JavaScript object that will contain the properties and values, typed values that have to be indexed for GraphQL, for SQL, for the index. A way to expose the things that we do in code today in C#. But it's moving all the code to the UI. That's always risky. It's not just a template here. It's code. And it's not just liquid. So that's hard. That's doable. It's a CMS in a CMS. Cool. Awesome. Thank you, David.
Welcome.